Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Yve Gray. I've been a journalist for 20 years, working in radio, TV and print for a variety of networks. And during my time, I have seen every trick in the book used to attract media attention. Just some examples for you. PR companies sending free goods and samples of what they want to promote. This is anything from books to makeup products. PR companies sending free tickets to events with the expectation the media will cover the event. This could be musicals, sports events, theatre. We've also seen food like muffins and donuts sent with a media release to a newsroom, and that's even when it's not even relevant to what they're trying to promote. Invitations to restaurants with the expectation of writing a favourable review. And on anniversaries of something that they're trying to promote, a big cake is often sent to the newsroom to celebrate. And look, I won't lie, journalists love to be fed and be entertained, but it won't guarantee it will get you a story from your press release. And certainly from my perspective, it won't get a run unless it's something that's newsworthy. And also, I work at the ABC where we're not allowed to accept gifts anyway. Now, I'm just going to be brutally honest. Media organisations get hundreds of emails in their inbox each day, and most get deleted. For myself, I really only have time to read ones that are relevant to the type of reporting I do, such as police stories, state government stories, Victorian issues. If I don't know who the sender is, or there isn't a subject line in an email that catches my attention, chances are it won't get read and just goes straight to the email bin. And also, nothing turns a journalist off more than a poorly put together media release. And what I would consider to be bad examples include poor spelling and grammar. And yes, this does happen, even though there are spell checks on most computers these days. Recycled press releases, and by that I mean each year where a company or an organisation has a yearly event that they try to promote, where they use a template, but they simply just change the date, the time and location of the event. Yes, as journalists, we do notice this, and it does come across as being a bit lazy. Another thing that's sort of pet hate for me would be a press release that doesn't even make sense. You know, I'll read the whole release and sort of be left thinking, I'm not really sure what the organisation is trying to achieve. And one final bad example would be not including a mobile phone number or email contact details to follow up the press release. Obviously, news happens 24/7, journalists work shift work, so we want to be able to contact someone at any time of the day to follow up that story. So what I'm going to talk you through today, there's three topics: what makes a good media release, writing a media release, and sending a media release. So what makes a good press release? Well, first and foremost, the most important thing is an attention-grabbing subject line. And this, I'm talking, would be used for the title on a press release, or for in the email, the subject line. You really want to leave the journalist wanting to know more, but at the same time, give a flavour of what your press release is actually about. So short and sharp is the best. I often tell people, think of a newspaper headline, what you'd see. Usually there's 3 or 4 words that sort of capture what the article is about. Apply a similar rule to when you write a media release and for the title of it. Now, the first sentence needs to have a strong news angle. So get straight to the point. Journalists are time poor, often we're meeting demanding deadlines, juggling multiple stories at a time. So make it easy for us by having a strong news angle. Having this there ready for them to go is actually a good thing, because it's what they'll need to use to pitch to the editor to get the story commissioned. So I can't stress enough how important it is to have a strong news angle. Now, my recommendation would be having a 1-page press release. So I'm thinking A4 size here. Just keep it simple, easy to read. As previously mentioned, journalists are really busy, but you also want to leave them wanting to find out more. Now, of course, there are going to be exemptions here where, and there's no rule that it has to be 1 page. Just from my experience, 1 page is quite good to be able to sort of read through and sort of get a bit of an idea as to what is being pitched to us. So another thing would be to have talent, case studies, photos and video opportunities readily available. Make it easy for the journalist, offer them all the ingredients to make a good story. Case studies can often be difficult to find, so by providing one to the journalist, it'll get you a good chance of getting that story that you want broadcast. Also, it's really important these days to think visually, especially with the rise of online news. Photos and videos are just as equally as important to tell a story. So what I would suggest is, if you can, prepare a video and some photos that you can offer to the media outlet, but also be aware that news outlets do like to do their own thing. So just make sure you have some talent readily available and photo opportunities that can easily happen, and that will increase your chances of getting publicity. We sort of talked on this, but having contact details, someone available 24/7 that the media can call at any time. So make sure you've got a mobile phone number and email address. And finally, put your media release on a professional letterhead. We want to know it's a trusted company or brand who is sending us this information, and that will play a part in whether or not the story gets a run. So moving on to the next section, writing a press release. Who, what, why, when, and where. Basically, you want the first sentence of your press release to summarise what it's all about in a catchy way. So by following the who, what, why, when, and where, that's a good way to do it. I often tell people to think of how you would actually tell a friend at the pub what story, like telling your friend at a pub a story. The key points that you would tell your friend is essentially what would be put into that media release. So as I said, just think of the who, what, why, when, and where, and try and get that up the top or as early as you can in that media release. Simple language, easy to understand. Well, that sort of goes without saying. I can tell you, as a cadet, when I was younger, we were taught to write so that children as young as 6 could understand. Now, I'm not saying your press release has to be as simple as that, but what I'm getting at is that don't put in elaborate words that people, for example, would need a dictionary to look up the meaning. Just make sure it's very clear and concise, and you've got your key messages there that are very easy to understand. Where possible, I'd recommend including facts and relevant research to support your case. So facts and figures will add weight to your case, and certainly any new recent research or statistics that you have will certainly attract interest. Editors love putting together meaningful graphs using those statistics to help tell the story. So if you've got them readily available, put them in. We've touched on this, but of course, make your press release newsworthy. So think of what you would generally read, see, or hear on the news, and that will give you a bit of an idea of what the media will publish. Look for any angle in your key messaging that is important for the public to know. Think about what affects people, what do they need to know. Avoid blanket advertising. So that's pretty straightforward. Do not make it look like an advertisement, because that is what paid advertising is about. The next advice is to include some quotes. So I would ensure that you have someone who's quite senior at your organisation. It could be like the CEO, the director, or even someone who is an expert on the project that you are trying to promote. I would have the quotes attributed to them. And I would suggest having at least 4 sentences worth of quotes that can be used. Now, most reporters do like to do their own interviews, but there are certainly times when particularly online and print reporters will use the quotes that you provide. So just by giving them that option is a good thing. And as I said earlier, ensure your contact details are on that media release, have a mobile number, email address, and a landline number. And do mention, of course, if you have a spokesperson or case study readily available to interview. So you've got your press release written. Now it is time to send it off. So the first thing is you need to identify the media outlets that you want to contact. So think of it like your target audience. Now, what I would suggest is to always have a database of media outlets, email addresses, phone numbers, their social media channels, as well as reporters and editors' names. Now, this database, I would suggest start putting it together now, because you may not have a media release you want to send out straight away, but there could be a situation where you may need to respond to some sort of breaking news that in some way, shape, or form affects yourself or, say, the company you work for. So it's good to have those details there so you could just very quickly send out a statement. Now, the best method of sending in a press release is via email. And the reason I say that is because I know for a fact that the email inboxes are the ones that are constantly monitored by media outlets. My suggestion is it's best to send early in the morning, so I'm talking around 6 o'clock in the morning to release that media release, or the night before with an embargo for the next day. And the reason I suggest that is it gives newspapers a chance, and even radio stations a chance, to get some grabs or quotes that they can leave out that can get a run first thing in the morning. And usually you'll find all the other media outlets will then follow, like TV stations. Now, once you've sent that email release, I'd suggest you follow up with a phone call. So when you call the newsroom, you ask for the chief of staff or the editor, and it's best to do this shortly after sending the media release to ensure that it was actually received. I would not be making multiple phone calls to a newsroom because they're so busy. And look, every media release that comes through that they're interested in, they sit down and have editorial meetings about it anyway. So it's really just a case of ensuring they've received the release, and if they are interested, they'll let you know. Now, I would also consider posting press releases on your own social media channels and tag media. A lot of the media outlets these days have teams that just work in the social media aspect, where they're trawling through social media looking for stories, and of course they're managing their own media channels. So by using that forum and drawing their attention to it, there's just another way that increases your chances of getting your story published. And finally, I would suggest putting your press release on your company website. I can't recommend highly enough having a news and media tab on your website that journalists can easily access. I know for myself, whenever there's a big breaking story, if there's a company that I want to get some background information on, or see if they've given at least some sort of statement on a particular issue, I go straight to the company website and look for their news and media section. It's also important on that to have contact details as well for whoever the media contact is for your organisation. So just to wrap it up here, I just want to show you a couple of press release examples that I would myself receive every day in my inbox and use regularly. So first up, the Victorian Government media release. Now, they usually stick to a pretty good formula, as you can see from on the screen. You've got the contact details of who the minister is. There's a title, which, you know, pandemic forces cancellation of 2021 F1 Grand Prix MotoGP. Well, that's pretty obvious what the whole media release is about. And there's some quotes down the bottom, as well as media contacts. So I find that the Victorian Government media releases are quite well written, and that's largely due to the fact that there's a lot of ex-journos that are actually working for the government now writing them. They sort of read as though they're, you know, you could like lift it and put it almost into a newspaper as it is. Just one final example I'll show you as well is this is the Victorian Health Department's media release. Now, in Victoria, we've got the Chief Medical Officer who sends out an update every afternoon on the latest coronavirus figures. And again, they stick to a bit of a formula here. As you can sort of see, you've got the key figures at the top, and then they actually put in bold where the important information is. So again, it's just another way of how they present their media information. That's more than a page, obviously, because it needs to be, because it's such important information, but it's all laid out there, very easy to read. So I just thought I'd give you a couple of examples of how media releases are presented. There's no strict rule as such, but I just find like these two examples just show how they're quite easy to read. So that brings us to an end today. So I want to thank you all so much for joining in. I do hope you found it interesting and some tips that you can take away when you go about writing up your press releases. And of course, if you've got any further questions, you're very welcome to email us. The email address is there, media@conversationcaravan.com.au. And of course, we do have our Engaging the Media online course, which this is just a little taste of what we cover there. So thank you again for your time. I hope we can see you again soon, and all the best with pitching your media stories.